Part 85. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 866. Shang Guandandan stood at the gate of the community, looking up and looking around, then raising his hands high, looking at the plush sleeves, feeling very cute. Because she often wears light-colored tops such as moon white, Zhou Shuling feels that her clothes are easy to get dirty, so she made several pairs of long and short sleeves for her to wear. As for those styles of wide robes with cloud sleeves, there is no way. Shang Guandandan's clothes are basically Chinese style. If you wear a plain jacket, you can also wear sleeves. Shang Guandandan stood on the spot and jumped up and clapped his hands again. He tilted his head to the left and tilted his head to the right. He felt that he was also very cute. He took a sip of water. There are very few people ordering takeout in the community, so as long as the takeaway person walks into the community now, he can basically be sure that he is delivering couples feather pieces to Shang Guandandan. Takeaway is nothing new. Just like in the Han Dynasty, Shang Guandandan gave the order and someone prepared the food and delivered it. 3 minutes later, Shang Guandandan's child and dog were discovered and they came over and stood with her at the gate of the community. A sprinkler truck came slowly, spraying water lines on the ground, sending leaves and debris to the street. Water mist flew up, and the child rushed into the spray range of the sprinkler truck with an ouch and was swept away. Spray couldn't open his eyes and ran back quickly. The dog also made a ouch and did the same thing. Kikik. In the evening, in addition to the takeaway couple's lung slices, there was also a spicy rooster carefully prepared by Zhou Shuling. Although the noodle shop at home is called Red Soup Spicy Rooster Noodles, and they make spicy rooster noodles as a topping every day, what I make at home is not far from what is sold in the store. Although the red peppers Zhou Shuling bought in the supermarket were not as expensive as Zhangshugang peppers, they still cost more than 80 yuan per pound. The rooster was a high-quality local rooster. She asked Mrs. Lu to bring it to her relatives in the countryside of Lifeng town. Spending money and getting favors. She also bought a bucket of chicken manure from Mrs. Liu's relatives. Chicken manure doesn't cost much, but it costs money and labor to transport it, right? Why did you buy a bucket of chicken manure? Mrs. Lu raised chickens, couldn't you ask her for some? The chicken manure was placed downstairs. The bucket was sealed, but Lu Chang'an still smelled the smell. Aunt Zhao doesn't want the land next to Building 11. She said she can give it to me. As long as she grows something, I can give her some, Zhou Shuling said with great anticipation. In fact, the vacant land in these communities does not have any property rights, but others have planted it for a few years. Even if they suddenly no longer plan to plant anything, if someone wants to use it, they have to talk to them carefully. They are all acquaintances and neighbors. Know if you are particular about it, it is easy for people to gossip about you. Grandma Liu's chicken manure is not enough for herself. How can she give me more? Zhou Shuling shook her head. How much did this bucket of chicken manure cost you? This bucket costs 15 yuan, and the shipping fee is 50 yuan. I don't have to pay for the chicken manure. Lu Chang'an opened the shopping app, searched for chicken manure, and then showed it to Zhou Shuling, 60 kilograms of high-quality chicken manure, free shipping for 65 yuan. Do you have 20 kilograms here? Zhou Shuling was surprised. Why is it so cheap? In fact, before buying chicken manure, she wanted to ask Lu Chang'an, but she also thought that if she had to ask Lu Chang'an about such a thing, he might think she was useless. Old Mrs. Lu must have told her relatives that you are a little rich woman, so she cheated. Well, she may not have deliberately cheated you. She doesn't sell chicken manure specifically, and it's not the same store that specializes in handling chicken manure on chicken farms. That's what happened. Lu Chang'an looked at Zhou Shuling's annoyed expression and laughed. Why do you want to buy chicken manure? Zhou Dongdong asked while sniffing and shrugging his shoulders. Even though he had just been beaten, he still had to ask curious questions. When she ran out of the house today, she was already covered in ash everywhere, and she was washed all over by the sprinkler truck. The mud and water were mixed together, so you can imagine what it would look like. It was impossible not to get beaten. Using excrement to fertilize can make the crops in the field grow more lush and healthy. After Shangguandandan finished speaking, he nodded and praised himself. The Queen Mother even knew such things, how considerate and down-to-earth she was. Then can't we go to the ground to poop together every day? Zhou Dongdong thought of a good idea. You, Lu Sin, and Shangguandandan can do this kind of thing together. Lu Chang'an refused. Zhou Dongdong didn't care about Brother Chang'an's rejection, he just looked at Shangguandandan expectantly. Shangguandandan turned his body and avoided Zhou Dongdong's expectant eyes. Zhou Dongdong looked at his mother again. I bought chicken manure, so you don't have to worry about it. Zhou Shuling glared at Zhou Dongdong angrily. Eating, don't talk about these things while eating. Zhou Dongdong pouted aggrievedly and protested loudly. Obviously it was Brother Chang'an who started talking about these things. Why don't you hurt Brother Chang'an? Songdazi said that her mother dared to ride on her father and beat him. Mom, when will you? How can I be braver? Zhou Shuling was stunned for a moment. Pink spread from the base of her ears, like the spring breeze passing through the peach orchard in March, dyeing the petals and eroding the pink and tender surroundings. Blushing and embarrassed, Zhou Shuling didn't dare to look at Lu Chang'an, but Shangguandandan chuckled. Zhou Shuling couldn't help but get angry. Just when she was about to stand up and deal with this nonsense child, Lu Chang'an pressed her shoulder and said, Tanjianwuji, let's eat. Just spoil her. Zhou Shuling took the opportunity to step down, her heart was pounding, she quickly pressed down the skirt that was stuck between her legs, her body tensed up, she lowered her head and pushed the rice into her mouth vigorously. Zhou Dongdong breathed a sigh of relief, but he felt that his mother was definitely not as brave as Songdazi's mother. If she really fought with Brother Chang'an, it would be the other way around. Shangguandandan touched Zhou Shuling's head, then touched Zhou Dongdong's head, and happily picked up the food. This is the feeling of family happiness. If only Lu Chang'an could kneel on the ground, rest his head on her lap, be docile and well behaved. It would be even better if she acted like she was kneeling to Chen Huan. Zhou Shuling flipped through a large bowl of spicy rooster, found 2 rooster eggs, and gave them to Lu Chang'an to eat. According to tradition, when eating chicken, the chicken claws are given to the person who makes money in the family. These chicken claws are called money claws. Of course, the male owner also eats the chicken rooster eggs to strengthen yang and nourish the kidneys. The chicken legs are eaten by the most pampered children in the family, or the elderly. But in the spicy rooster dish, the chicken legs and chicken feet are also chopped into pieces for the sake of flavor. Step by step. You should eat one too, it's quite delicious. Lu Chang'an gave one to Zhou Shuling to eat. This thing is really delicious. It's also sold by the pound online. The taste is a bit worse, and the cooking method is more particular. It's not suitable for ordinary people. Eat more. Although it is rich in nutrients, the cholesterol is too high. Zhou Shuling's cheeks were slightly red, and she took a bite of it. It was really delicious. Bailong Center. Arbor Day is here. In the greenhouse garden on the top floor, the fresh water vapor and the fragrance of flowers are mixed together. The mist is driven by small aircraft like the fairies' cloud sleeves fluttering. Bamboo Hoontang is lazily lying on his side on the boat, shuttled among the flowers and green leaves. Middle. Miss, it's time for class, Yan Qingcheng said while standing on the shore. Looking at Zhu Hoontang's complicated floral skirt, her slender and straight calves, and the stockings on her toes, there is a golden carp. Every time she stretches out her toes to touch the water patterns, it's like the carp jumping out of the water. If there were fairies in the world, they would probably be like Zhu Hoontang. It's a pity, I just don't like studying. Yan Qingcheng is a little regretful. In some novels and stories she read, the backgrounds of young ladies often have the attribute of academic masters. They are usually from Ivy League colleges, Oxbridge and so on. Or the top ones in the country. Where is Zhu Huntang? She came to Hunan University with donations. This was the first time she met Yan Qingcheng, the eldest lady who ranked last in the whole grade. You must know that some wealthy families she knew had worked hard to educate their children since childhood. Unless children from wealthy families he is born with low intelligence, otherwise he would not have such poor grades. Didn't you ask for leave to spend time with your mother? Zhu Huntang picked 2 flowers and put them in his ears in an attempt to resist Yan Qingcheng's urging sound waves. I asked for leave from the school, but I'd better try not to delay your class. Yan Qingcheng felt that since she received a high salary, she must do her job well. She is a very responsible person. Last semester, Zhu Huntang came last in the exam, which was quite funny. It has nothing to do with Yan Qingcheng. But if Zhu Huntang still fails in the exam this semester, Yan Qingcheng will feel uncomfortable and feel sorry for the high salary. I'm sorry for Lu Chang'an's recommendation and trust. Lu Chang'an absolutely trusted himself and asked her to be a tutor for Zhu Huntang. From the daily life of Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang, it can be seen that Lu Chang'an cared about Zhu Huntang's study very much. I am now a fairy wandering in a peaceful world. Fairies in this world don't learn. Zhu Huntang didn't want to move at all. She only wandered for 10 minutes and had to wander for at least another 20 minutes. Yan Qingcheng sighed softly. This job that even Lu Chang'an found difficult was indeed not that easy to do, but the money was too much. Even if Yan Qingcheng was asked to work as a cow or a horse, she would persist, so stand patiently on the shore and wait. It's not a problem if things go on like this. Zhu Huntang thought that Yan Qingcheng would definitely not retreat despite the difficulties, so he would have to use the strategy he formulated this afternoon. Zhu Huntang took out his mobile phone and sent a text message. A few minutes later, Lu Yuwang walked into the greenhouse garden and said to Yan Qingcheng, "I'm going to teach Zhu Huntang a traditional culture course today. How about you teach her another day?" "Ah, Professor Lu, the class schedule that Secretary Jing gave me didn't include any classes for you," Yan Qingcheng asked strangely. "What's more, didn't Lu Chang'an take all the traditional culture courses? Could it be that Lu Chang'an has completely given up teaching Zhu Huntang himself?" Yan Qingcheng did not doubt that Lu Yuwang would come to teach Zhu Huntang. What expert professor could Zhu Huntang not hire? "Oh, what you got is probably the originally arranged course schedule. I took a temporary course, so it's not on the schedule," Lu Yuwang explained calmly. "Okay then, I will communicate with Secretary Jin about the postponement of the course." After Yan Qingcheng said that, he left. After all, this is a famous professor in the school. She came to teach Zhu Huntang, so Yan Qingcheng would not compete with her. Schedule. Watching Yan Qingcheng leave, Lu Yuwang looked at Zhu Huntang on the boat and said, "We are clear, can I leave now?" "Why don't you come and have fun on the boat?" Zhu Huntang enthusiastically invited. "We'll go watch the square dance competition together later." Okay. Lu Yuwang hesitated for a moment. The corrupt and luxurious living environment of the bourgeoisie was the most suitable for beauty selfies, and it was hard to refuse. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 867. After Qin Yanan received a call from Lu Chang'an in the afternoon, Zhu Huntang told him the location of the fiber mucus ablation agent, so Qin Yanan tore off the tape and lowered Zhu Huntang from the ceiling. Something interesting must have happened. Zhu Huntang couldn't wait to get involved. "I think it's fun to have you taped to the ceiling," Qin Yanan said while looking at the traces left by the tape on the ceiling. "Delete the photo you just took." Once while playing landlords here, Zhu Huntang was bullied by Qin Yanan and Lu Chang'an, a pair of adulterers and adulterers. His whole body was covered with tape and turned into a mummy. At that time, Zhu Huntang felt that she had a strange, messy, decadent aesthetic, but after looking at the photos, she found that this was not the case at all. So today I am not confident that under the situation, the photos taken by Chinyanan are still beautiful and fairy-like, so Chinyanan must delete them. I won't delete it, Chinyanan chuckled. This kind of photo can be used to scare children. If Lu Qianchen disobeys in the future, he will show her the consequences of her sister's naughty behavior. Chinyanan had a hunch that no matter how carefully she raised her baby and worked hard on prenatal education and parenting education, Lu Qianchen would not be the kind of obedient child who would not let his parents go berserk in the future. To deal with this kind of child, any equal respect and advanced parenting concepts are meaningless and will only make her rub her nose in the face. Whatever, I don't care about you. Zhu Huntang has more important things to do now, and analyzed with great certainty, there are only slime traps in the fairy forest on the first floor of the house. Old Man Trouble and Yan Hui must have entered the room. After that, I couldn't wait to kiss passionately, and when I saw a tatami, I quickly pulled Yan Hui to start having sex, but the trap was triggered. Yan Hui doesn't have this kind of relationship with him, well, just like Hu Wenro and Su Dongpo. The two admire each other, but Hu Wenro is Li Ziyi's wife. She knows how to keep a distance when interacting with other men. Chinyanan naturally wants to maintain her brother's image. In her conversations with others, her brother should be a noble and elegant figure of a talented man. During the romance with her confidant, she only talks about the past and the present, rather than being turned upside down and dripping with juice. Can you tell me some people I know to use as an analogy? Zhu Huntang frowned. She was also erudite in ancient times, and naturally knew about Su Dongpo. With a little witty analysis, Hu Wenro and Li Ziyi were probably also ancient people. Your request is basically equivalent to a calculus problem. You have to let me answer it with addition and subtraction with intent so that you can understand. Chinyanan shook his head. It was too difficult to meet the requirements of the third lady. It was beyond ordinary human capabilities. Zhu Huntang sneered, people like you who always quote the deeds of the ancients are really ridiculous. Chinyanan turned around and didn't want to pay attention to her. Chinyanan had already given her face by not laughing at her. It was good for her, but she thought Chinyanan was ridiculous. Since they are ancient people, they don't know what happened tens of thousands of years ago. When talking about them, they seem to be very familiar with them and know everything about them. Maybe the Hu Wenro you are talking about is Li Ziyi during the day. My wife is eating dongpo meat at night, who knew? Haha, Zhu Huntang disagreed. In her eyes, no one or anything could be doubted. When Chinyanan straightened her waist and let out a long sigh, Myoman's figure was ups and downs as always. The thin buttons on her waist were worried that she would lose her job due to the pressure from top to bottom. She couldn't help but sympathize with Li Ziyi. If Li Ziyi knew that someone had nicknamed his wife Dongpo Ro, he would have wished he had died in the hands of Cai Zheng. If you have something to do, just hurry up and get involved. You are always very active in seeking death. Don't waste your time with me. Chinyanan waved his hand, then turned on the TV, which was talking about she is very interested in special programs on the Kinling Mountains where giant pandas have more frequent activities. Who doesn't love pandas? After all, it is a creature that even Zhou Dongdong has never eaten. Zhu Huntang thought for a while and felt that he should take some precautions before taking action. However, thinking that he could not resist Lu Chang'an's killing methods, he slapped his hands and ran away without fear. Arriving at the foot of Lushan Mountain, after Zhu Huntang entered the house, Lu Chang'an and Yan Hui had already left. Zhu Huntang only saw Lu Yuwang lying on the tatami. Miss Zhu, help me. Lu Yuwang heard the sound of someone coming in and finally breathed a sigh of relief when she saw it was Zhu Huntang. You must know that she had just thought of the plot of the little dragon girl in the Legend of the Condor Heroes. Lu Yuwang didn't want to become Little Dragon Girl. Little Dragon Girl was just an ordinary mediocre woman. For a mature, charming, and beautiful woman like Lu Yuwang, if a man came in just now, she might suffer unbearable humiliation. As for Lu Jianxi who abandoned her, what kind of man was he? But Zhu Huntang stood still. After showing a vigilant and thoughtful expression, she stepped back a few steps and stood at the door looking around. "Ah, Miss Zhu, don't leave," Lu Yuwang stared at Zhu Huntang nervously. "This Zhu Huntang is beautiful, but I heard that he is not very smart and often behaves unexpectedly. Most people will save Lu Yuwang. But Zhu Huntang is not an ordinary person. Humph, this must be a trap." Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Yuwang suspiciously. The writhing woman was like an earthworm on a fishhook, and the strips of meat next to the trap looked like bait. Especially since the bottle of spray was still stuck in Lu Yuwang's chest, it didn't look like it was a trap. Zhu Huntang felt that he could do without his brain. It can be seen from the position of the spray that this trap should be aimed at men, and the possibility of deliberately targeting Zhu Huntang is relatively small. Considering that it was Lu Chang'an who was here, it is very likely that Lu Chang'an set up this trap as Lu Jianxi, and then changed his identity as Lu Chang'an, and then came to save the beauty as a hero, or some other conspiracy. This cannot be hidden from the eldest daughter Zhu Huntang, one of the fairies who is wise, brave, witty, and brave. Since this is Lu Chang'an's conspiracy, Zhu Huntang must destroy it and not let him succeed. Zhu Huntang returned to the door, tapped the hidden touch panel with his finger, then entered the administrator mode and checked the room status. Number of people in building, 2. There were only 2 people, that is to say, Yan Hui and Lu Chang'an had left. Zhu Huntang locked the door and walked to Lu Yuwang in a swagger. "What happened?" Zhu Huntang held the bottle of spray, pulled it out and inserted it again, while looking at Lu Yuwang. Judging from the force feedback, Lu Yuwang, like Qin Yanan, is also a nasty big-name woman. Of course, this can be concluded visually. Although Zhu Huntang has a good relationship with many big-name women who have obscene intentions, this does not prevent her from hating such women at the same time. Zhu Huntang does not have much affection for Lu Yuwang, so naturally he will not actively and enthusiastically rescue her. Zhu Huntang felt that even if An Nuan fell into such a situation, Zhu Huntang would be more active in rescuing him. After all, An Nuan didn't look as fat and tender as maggots or strips of meat, and he didn't look like a bait. I think so. As for the truth in this situation, there is no telling what Zhu Huntang will actually do. Hey, I am such a mysterious little fairy that makes people love and hate her. It is difficult to figure out. My. Lu Yuwang hesitated, stalking secretly and then falling into a trap. This is not a glorious thing. Don't want to say it? Then I'll check the surveillance camera first, and you can lie down slowly. Zhu Huntang fully grasped the situation and was about to walk away after speaking. I said, I followed Professor Lu Jianxi and a woman named Yan Hui from the school, and they walked into your house. Lu Yuwang confessed helplessly. Zhu Huntang couldn't help but frowned. Since it's tracking, that means it wasn't Professor Lu Jianxi who let you in, but you broke in on your own. Lu Yuwang nodded slightly proudly, expecting Zhu Huntang to ask her how she broke in. How did you get in? In addition to the first access code, if you want to enter after 2 people have entered, you need to enter the second access code. Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Yuwang in disbelief. Even if you can secretly see the first password, how do you know the second password? This is the idea of what is real and what is imaginary, and what is fictitious is what is real. The password system of this door looks very complicated, but I think this is a place where we live daily. Is it necessary to make it so complicated? Most people will be confused by superficial phenomena. Seeing such a password door, I didn't dare to try to crack it, but I wanted to keep it simple and simplify the complex, so I directly entered the popular medium complex password 123456. Lu Yuwang explained his thoughts calmly. So, first the password, I didn't see it secretly. Zhu Huntang always thought that the mother who could educate an ordinary daughter like An Nuan would probably have mediocre and simple thinking. She did not expect that Lu Yuwang was not like this and could vaguely follow Zhu Huntang's thinking. Looking at Zhu Huntang's expression, Lu Yuwang continued to explain his thoughts calmly. The second password looks more complicated and makes people feel that it must be more difficult to crack, but you did the opposite. The password is still 123,456. Even if someone is as smart as me and has solved the first password, when faced with the second password, they will definitely think that the second password must be much more complicated, and I used reverse thinking crack, because I know you are not that simple. You don't care whether the password is complicated or not, you just want to play with people's hearts during the password setting process. Zhu Huntang suppressed his excitement. There was someone who understood him so well that he could be called a confidant. He quickly pulled out the ablating agent and rescued Lu Yuwang. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 868. Capitalists cannot make money early. Zhu Huntang admires Lu Yuwang very much, but this does not prevent her from fully exploring Lu Yuwang's residual value, so she brings Lu Yuwang back to Beilong Center and teaches her lessons as a resistor Yan Qing Cheng backhand. As a teacher, Lu Yuwang originally didn't want to do this kind of thing, but Zhu Huntang saved her first. Secondly, students like Zhu Huntang may not be suitable for the traditional teaching model. If they are psychologically rebellious, they can't learn through extra classes. To something. Lu Yuwang was sitting on the boat. She was an elegant and charming woman, with a white and slender neck, an exquisitely crafted cheongsam, and the colorful flowers around her. She took a photo of her and made a beautiful blockbuster. Lu Yuwang didn't really like selfies with only one face. Environmental portraits could better highlight her temperament. Lu Yuwang took a few pictures and asked Zhu Huntang to help take a few. She discovered that Zhu Huntang's photos the technology is also quite good, especially in the choice of filters, which fully considers her outfit. Miss Zhu, do you also know Professor Lu? Lu Yuwang probed quietly. Lu Jianxi and Yan Hui chose the date place in Zhuhuntang, so naturally they have a close relationship. Zhu Huntang probably didn't know that Lu Jianxi and Lu Chang'an might be suspected of the same person. Such shocking secrets are often known to only a few people in the world, and Lu Yuwang was naturally one of them. Although Zhu Huntang is not simple, she is still too young after all. Everyone would usually keep such important secrets secret from her tacitly. Grandpa Lu, Zhu Huntang called out delicately, pursed his lips and nodded. Her behavior is actually a hint. Calling someone sweetly means a close relationship. In fact, the man she is closest to is Lu Chang'an. If you are careful, you will detect Zhu Huntang's hint. Lu Chang'an is Lu Jianxi. Lu Yuwang was not surprised that Zhu Huntang called Lu Jianxi grandpa. Firstly, Lu Jianxi was old enough to be Zhu Huntang's grandfather. Secondly, she had noticed the unusual closeness between Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang. When Zhu Huntang asked Lu Yuwang to help him avoid studying, Lu Yuwang also learned that Yan Qing Cheng was also the tutor Lu Chang'an found, and Lu Chang'an usually forced Zhu Huntang to study. This is clearly the gesture of an elder. Lu Yuwang suspects that it is not very rare for Lu Chang'an to appear as Lu Jianxi. It is very likely that Lu Jianxi went to Taiwan after leaving Xiongda and established a close relationship with the Zhu family. This is why Zhu Huntang chose Xiang University to enroll. Otherwise, with the financial resources and influence of the Zhu family, how could the eldest daughter of the Qian family choose a third-tier city to live and study? Because of Lu Chang'an's original identity as Professor Lu Jianxi, he came into contact with Zhu Huntang in Taiwan as Grandpa Lu, so now even as Lu Chang'an, he likes to act like an elder in front of Zhu Huntang, forcing her to study and finding supplementary lessons for her. Teacher. Zhu Huntang must not have thought that her Grandpa Lu would reveal so much information. Lu Yuwang was slightly complacent, but his expression was calm as usual. This is Professor Liu's palace, and she is not the kind of person who can easily read people's thoughts. Woman. Hey, she is really a cunning and almost sinister woman. Most women are often sold by her and still help her count the money. Lu Yuwang commented on himself with satisfaction. Did Professor Lu Jianxi borrow the house from you today, or did Lu Chang'an borrow it? Lu Yuwang continued to test. She was very reserved, and of course she would not directly ask Lu Jianxi whether he was Lu Chang'an. It is very likely that Zhu Huntang doesn't know at all, and asking her like this will only arouse her vigilance and doubts. Is there a difference? I will borrow it anyway. Lu Chang'an never regards himself as an outsider. Not only does he like to order me to do things, he also likes to order my people to do things for him. Zhu Huntang said meaningfully. Is there a difference? Of course it was another hint, but Lu Yuwang would definitely not understand it. How could ordinary people suspect that Lu Jianxi and Lu Chang'an were the same person? Lu Yuwang nodded. It seemed that Zhu Huntang was also a little confused about Lu Chang'an's tendency to act like an elder. If she knew that Lu Chang'an was Lu Jianxi, then she would be able to understand Lu Chang'an's attitude towards her, but how could ordinary people doubt it? Are Lu Jianxi and Lu Chang'an the same person? It seems that you actually quite like Lu Chang, and Lu Yuwang remembered the important point. She had always felt that Zhu Huntang was someone An Nuan should be wary of. A beautiful and lovely young lady like Zhu Huntang should be more attractive than Bai Hui. Charming. You don't have to worry about me, Zhu Huntang said angrily. In Lu Chang'an's eyes, she was just a cute and beautiful fairy sheep. He didn't regard her as the most beautiful girl in the world at all. An Nuan's competitor is Bai Fen. Bai Hui is also a fairy. She has a good figure, can dance, and can play the ball like a ball, which is Lu Chang'an's favorite type. Zhu Huntang also planned to take the opportunity to help a bunch of Bai Fen, so that Lu Balian gradually surfaced, creating factual pressure in the word-of-mouth remarks. Lu Yuwang was a little surprised, because she had always thought that Bai Hui was just an ordinary girl, with neither a warm figure nor a warm face, but now she had a vague understanding of some of the reasons. Lu Chang'an is Lu Jianxi. He dated Lu Yuwang online as an old man because Lu Yuwang was the campus beauty of Hunan University and Lu Jianxi probably also had feelings for her. Now he mainly lives as Lu Chang'an. This feeling has an impact on him, prompting him to flirt with Lu Yuwang on the internet, but in reality he chooses An Nuan as the sustenance of this feeling. Lu Yuwang felt a little sorry for An Nuan, because Lu Chang'an chose to fall in love with An Nuan because of his feelings for Lu Yuwang back then. This kind of love may have more than enough affection but not enough passion, because An Nuan is not Lu Yuwang after all, and Lu Chang'an is not completely satisfied, so he chooses to make up for it with an extra emotion. An Nuan and Bai Hui, these two beautiful girls together can barely compete with Lu Yuwang. Lu Yuwang knows this very well. He has An Nuan's beauty and long legs, and Bai Hui's breasts and cute and talented at dancing. There is nothing that can be done about this. You can't blame the mother. Lu Yuwang sighed, regretful and helpless. After thinking about these things, Lu Yuwang finally let go of the grudge he had always had. From now on, he and Lu Chang'an should be able to get along peacefully without being entangled and angry. You can find an opportunity to have a good chat with him and let him focus on An Nuan. The gap between An Nuan and Professor Lu is actually not that big, especially since he specializes in various super black technologies, which makes An Nuan's figure become harmonious. It shouldn't be difficult to find Professor Lu who is almost the same. Lu Yuwang and Zhu Huntang chatted for a while, and after dinner, accompanied by Zhong Qing, they went to the square dance final venue. Qing Qing, why are you free to play with us today? Zhu Huntang asked strangely. Zhong Qing gradually handed over the job of Zhu Huntang's life assistant to Jin Xiaomei. Zhong Qing can still intervene and report some important events related to Zhu Huntang to the third wife. After all, Su Mei, who is far away in Antarctica, must maintain a certain degree of discipline over Zhu Huntang. If she completely lets Zhu Huntang go, there will be no one beside Zhu Huntang. Without any eyeliner, Zhu Huntang would probably act recklessly, and he might even be sent to the Antarctic by Lu Chang'an. Su Mei will not ask Zhongqing to do anything specific to affect Zhu Huntang. As long as Zhu Huntang knows that her every move will still be known to her mother in Antarctica, she will be much more honest. Bai Hui is the lead dancer. When she participates in such a competition, I, as my sister, want to support her. Zhongqing smiled slightly and glanced at Lu Yuwang again. When a mother is such a stunning beauty in the world, her daughter, even though she lacks some charm, is still a strong rival. The little cousin's opponent is really formidable, Zhongqing secretly marveled. Lu Yuwang was also sizing up Zhongqing. She had met Zhongqing several times on the campus of Hunan University. The contacts between Baojun Group and Beilong Center and Hunan University were all done through Zhongqing. Zhongqing is Bai Hui's sister? They were probably cousins or something like that. Zhongqing and Bai Hui seemed to have similar figures, and their legs were also very good looking. They were not the kind of slender chopstick legs, but full of a fat and round feeling. Especially now, Zhongqing is wearing a black and gray uniform skirt. There is a 5 cm slit in the skirt, but it is forced into a right angle by her thighs tightly wrapped in stockings. Such a woman can only look at her back. It will remind people of many office stories, the kind where the city is very hot. Lu Yuwang pulled the hem of his cheongsam. It's very lively today. Dandan should also go. She doesn't like dancing, but she can sit aside and watch others dance. I want to sit with Dandan in addition to being sticky with Lu Chang'an. Zhu Huntang also likes to hang out with Shang Guandan. Go to Dan. How come Professor Lu is here? Today's competition is actually a square dance competition for middle-aged and elderly people, Zhongqing asked Lu Yuwang curiously. Although some well-maintained, graceful, and elegant old women are often seen in square dancing, Professor Lu is still not there. It is difficult for ordinary people to associate Lu Yuwang with square dancing. Occasionally, there are young sisters-in-law hanging around. He is in the square dance team, but his temperament cannot be compared with Lu Yuwang's. Lu Yuwang was among them, and it felt a bit like Tang Xi dancing Yulin Bell in the most dazzling ethnic-style dance group. I'll just take a look. Lu Yuwang smiled slightly. Today she also wanted to take a closer look at Bai Hui and Lu Chang'an. She didn't fully believe Zhu Huntang's words about Lu Chang'an and Bai Hui. It's a pity that Lu Chang'an can't jump up, Zhongqing said with a little regret. In fact, in addition to cheering up his little cousin, Zhongqing also hoped to see Lu Chang'an take the stage. That would be interesting. I wonder if he can unite with others to encourage him. Lu Chang'an exited. He should be able to dance, but I don't know if he can dance. Lu Yuwang remembered that Professor Lu Jianxi was a popular figure in Hunan University. He was a popular figure in that era, so why couldn't he dance? How many families have been torn apart because they went to dance halls or liked to go to dances? It is probably equivalent to today's young families. Couples like to go to nightclubs and bars. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 869. Zhou Shuling changed into dance costumes at home. Zhu Huntang was a sponsor and actively participated in customizing the costumes. The styles were trendy and expensive. What Zhou Shuling is wearing now is Han-style clothing, a short horseface skirt, drawings of goldfish, water patterns and roses, a shiny satin cloak, and beautiful goldfish scales on the cuffs and collar. She was a little regretful that Lu Chang'an refused to wear men's dance clothes, but instead put on the hanfu that An Nuan gave him during the Chinese Valentine's Day last year. The two words hanfu also make some people feel like PTSD patients. Some people think that the concept of hanfu did not exist in the past and was just a new gimmick and hype. So what? None of your business. The clothes are very beautiful, but they are too lively, and the colors are bright and clear, making you look more like a girl than a beautiful young woman, Lu Chang'an said dissatisfiedly to Zhou Shuling, who was spinning in circles. Zhou Shuling subconsciously felt aggrieved. She felt that this outfit was quite pretty. When she twirled in circles, the skirt flew up beautifully. It reminded her of Miss Zhu's temperament and style. Zhu Huntang liked to twirl in circles. Beautiful young woman, she still grasped the last three words. Zhou Shuling was a little shy. Normally, he would always say that she was pretty in appearance but only beautiful in mind. He would even say that she was ordinary. It turns out that she is beautiful in his heart after all, and now she looks like a girl. Isn't this the highest compliment to a mature woman? As long as a woman hears someone saying that she looks young, there is no way she would be happy, especially from a guy like Lu Chang'an who usually doesn't talk sweetly and praises others. What Lu Chang'an means is that there are many beautiful girls around him, but you are the only beautiful young woman, which is especially precious. The emperor, who is both lustful and slutty, always hopes that his harem will be filled with all the beauties in the world. In addition to having the scale and the variety should be complete, from young girls to old ladies, Shang Guandandan said loudly. Xiaoling is very virtuous, but when it comes to understanding Lu Chang'an's lustful heart, she is always slower than other girls. Women such as Fenfen, Yaya, and Fang Fang basically know how he wants to tease him just by looking at him. And toyed with them. Shang Guandandan must enlighten and guide Zhou Shuling in this regard. After all, this is one of her most beloved daughters-in-law. It is Shang Guandandan's unshirkable responsibility to help her gain an advantage in the harem. In short, I hope that in the long-term future, Shang Guandandan will like to eat Zhou Shuling's meat buns, and Lu Chang'an will also like to eat Zhou Shuling's meat buns. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Zhou Shuling hurriedly fiddled with her hair, her ears turned red, and her eyes were as panicked as a pool of spring water stirred by a young man. Lu Chang'an glared at Shang Guandandan. He wanted to explain, but he forgot about it. Shang Guandandan just misinterpreted his meaning and was too lazy to argue with her. Don't teach the children bad things. Lu Chang'an lowered his voice and pointed at Zhou Dongdong, who was climbing on Lu Xian's back. Zhou Dongdong has been a child without many new clothes since he was a child, and now he is not interested in new clothes. When his mother puts on new clothes, she will run around in front of brother Chang'an. It looks like Lu Xian picked up garbage outside and brought it back. Zhou Dongdong shook his head in front of him and made no difference. As a clever child, no matter how brave she is, she cannot say these things to her mother, otherwise Zhou Dongdong will have no choice but to run away with the ouch. Although the community is large, there is no place for her. Now Zhou Dongdong just wants to try riding Lucine up and down the stairs. It feels a little bit fun. Dongdong, do you know what I just said? Shang Guandandan looked at Zhou Dongdong expectantly. Ouch. Zhou Dongdong casually called out to deal with Sister Dandan, who seemed to have evil intentions. Shang Guan drank champagne regretfully and recited a poem, recalling the old days when the king was first elected. The servant invited his pet to learn from Mome. Now the discarded grass is not as good as the willow branches of Zengtai. I hope Zhou Shuling will be alert after hearing this. If she wants her grace to last long, she must actively learn from the Queen Mother, so as to avoid the fate of not as good as the willow branches of Zengtai. When Zhou Dongdong heard someone reciting a poem, he felt a little sleepy and fell off Lu Xian's back. He quickly recited Li Liyuan grass, missing 2 sentences in the middle. Spring breeze blows again several times to remind himself that he is a poet. Children who can recite poems should not fall asleep when they hear others reciting poems. Dan, she likes to make some jokes sometimes, don't take it to heart, Zhou Shuling said hesitantly to Lu Chang'an. Zhou Shuling couldn't understand the poem Dan read, but she still understood the previous words. What kind of harem, what kind of girl turns into an old woman? I really don't know where Dandan came from so many messy thoughts. It must be those bottomless novels on the internet that poisoned her. Zhou Shuling usually has a fair complexion, but when she is shy, her whole face becomes pink and hot, and her eyes tremble like ripples. The shyness of a young woman is always charming, adding a lot of burning temptation to her charm. Lu Chang'an smiled. Smile, I don't take it to heart, but I feel like you do. No. No, Zhou Shuling took a few steps back as if she was startled. They were obviously a family, so how could she have such random thoughts? She knew that Lu Chang'an had a girlfriend, and she also knew An Nuan. How shameless a person could be to still have wild thoughts about Lu Chang'an under such circumstances. Even if sometimes, no, not at any time, Zhou Shuling hurriedly pulled Zhou Dongdong's ears and lectured her, "What are you doing? You want to ride a dog again? What should you do if you fall down while running?" After a delay and going downstairs, Shang Guandandan asked to use her electric pony carriage as transportation to the competition venue. Her arrangement is that Zhou Dongdong stands on the footrest, and the Queen Mother's noble but not big ass can be placed on the pointed position of the mount, leaning against Lu Chang'an's arms, safe and majestic. Zhou Shuling sits behind Lu Chang'an and can hold her arms. Lu Chang'an's waist is safe and sweet. Lu Sin ran behind him. The endurance of ordinary Rottweilers in long-distance running is definitely not as good as that of the sled three fools, but there is still no problem in running with the electric car, not to mention that this is the evolution of the third generation of high-level Templars. The saint of Zhu Fenglai sword sect sat down to protect the Dharma. Purchasing an electric pony carriage fully meets the family's travel needs. "I am so wise and powerful." Shang Guandandan touched the electric pony cart and nodded, saying that such praise was well deserved. "Well, as expected of you." Lu Chang'an nodded. Zhou Dongdong also nodded together. "Wherever I go, I ride an electric pony carriage. It will accompany me to the ends of the world." Shang Guandandan loudly announced how much he liked this electric pony carriage. Usually only Lu Chang'an objects to Shang Guandandan's arrangements, but after all, Lu Chang'an is a person who can actively adapt to changes in the environment. Recently, Shang Guandandan has repeatedly done things that go against Lu Chang'an's wishes. In the end, Lu Chang'an compromised with her, so now if it was necessary, or her arrangement was not too excessive and distorted human nature, Lu Chang'an would let her go. Lu Chang'an did not think that this was the initial success of the Queen Mother's training, but it was just a reflection of his broad-mindedness. Zhou Shuling sat sideways in the back, but this sitting posture made the lines of her buttocks and legs appear more rounded and tight. She leaned closely against Lu Chang'an. She did not help Lu Chang'an's waist, but just held onto the aluminum tube next to the seat. And worried that his chest would hit his back when braking. This was nothing originally, but he just said that she took something to heart. What if he thought she did it on purpose? It is very easy for an electric car to carry so many people. There was once a cool boy carrying 6 girls alone, which shocked many people, especially those lonely people who had the passenger seat of a luxury car but it was empty. As soon as the electric car arrived at the gate of the community, Shang Guandandan raised his hand majestically to stop. "Oh! There is an extra long luxury custom-made RV parked at the gate of the community. Secretary Jin is arranging the old men and ladies of the community dance team to board the car. As a team sponsored by Zhu Huntang, no matter what the final result is, the lineup must be maintained." Such a big car. Shang Guandandan walked to Secretary Jin holding a thermos bottle and looked up at the double-decker RV. This was the first time she had seen such a long, big, and tall car. Secretary Jin smiled and invited Shang Guandandan to get in the car. In fact, this RV was used by Zhu Huntang to pick up and arrange guests' activities. The RVs for her own use were larger and more luxurious, but they would never be used by others. Shang Guandandan turned around and waved to Zhou Shuling, "The dance team needs to move together." Zhou Shuling originally wanted to ride in Lu Chang'an's electric car, but now she wanted to avoid suspicion, lest Lu Chang'an think she was cheating on him, so she hurriedly followed Shang Guandandan. Don't you have to ride your electric pony carriage wherever you go? When you say the ends of the earth, do you mean the distance from the door of your home to the door of your community? Lu Chang'an reminded Shang Guandandan of what he had said a minute ago. Shang Guandandan's back froze for a moment, then he touched his ears and walked into the car. The Queen Mother's ears were deafened just now and she heard nothing. The most reliable people in this world are only children and dogs. Lu Chang'an sighed, pointed behind him, and Lu Sin jumped on. Lu Chang'an rode an electric car, carrying children and dogs, and followed the luxury RV to the Heilong Stadium. There was a fierce battle here tonight. The luxury RV stopped, and the last one to get out was Bai Hui. It turned out that Bai Hui was already in the car when she was at the gate of the community. She had been putting on makeup. When she saw Shang Guandandan and Zhou Shuling, she wanted to ask Lu Chang'an why she didn't get in the car. As a result, Shang Guandandan asked her to help with makeup, and Bai Hui didn't have time to run out and say hello to Lu Chang'an. Today Sister Xiaoling and I are leading the dance together. Unfortunately, Dandan is too proud of her status to participate. Otherwise, the effect would have been better if we had 3 people leading the dance, Bai Hui said to Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an smiled. Is the Queen Mother proud of her status? The Queen Mother is just lazy. Why hasn't Zhuntang arrived yet? Lu Chang'an looked around, but unexpectedly saw Fujiwara Kui getting out of a car with diplomatic license plates, followed by an entourage holding a huge Ultraman in their hands. All kinds of requests. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 870. Seeing the Fujiwara Kyusui and the luxury cars with diplomatic license plates, Lu Chang'an felt a little emotional. The international development environment and influence of Japanese companies and the chaebols behind them were far beyond what Chinese companies could match. This is natural. National sovereignty and military power are under the control of others. Naturally, we should be kinder to dogs on leashes and have more trust. What makes Lu Chang'an interesting is that some companies always like to express directly or implicitly, Chinese people, don't be too narrow-minded. I am a company with an international vision and transcend the narrow concept of country. It's actually quite funny. This kind of the positioning is so stupid that it makes people laugh, because it cannot be accepted by the people on whom they make their fortune, and it will also be ridiculed by the real circle of big international capitalists. You idiot, are you worthy? Who will accept you? It's more like being a fat sheep. Lu Chang'an searched the internet and found that there was no news that directly mentioned Fujiwara Kui's name. There was quite a lot of news about visits and exchanges between Fujiwara's chaebol companies. Fujiwara Kui stayed in Guncha for a long time. Lu Chang'an asked Li Hongfang to search for relevant information and materials about Fujiwara Kui, but she never responded. Li Hongfang seems to be busy with too many things recently. Not only do he have to open a shop with Zhou Shuling, but he also has to contact Li Jiama to prepare the number 2 tomb of Marquis Haihun, and he is also responsible for paying attention to Fujiwara Jijing. It seems that he is a little overwhelmed. Lu Chang'an himself didn't have much to do, so it seemed that he still had to help Li Hongfang share the burden personally. Zhou's Hufenglai sword sect couldn't continue to exploit him endlessly after finally recruiting a disciple with real mobility. By the way, Li Hongfang is not an official disciple yet, but he allows pregnant women, birds, children, dogs, sheep, and other random creatures to occupy high positions, leaving their corpses to eat nothing. Is that an acquaintance of yours? Bai Hui followed Lu Chang'an's gaze and glanced at Fujiwara Ki in the distance. Bai Hui was very satisfied with today's makeup, and of course she was looking forward to hanging around in front of Lu Chang'an to see his reaction. Well, under normal circumstances he would not react. I also expect him to give a few compliments. This is probably as unlikely as when he going to Hisense Plaza during lunch without waiting in line. But what's the problem? So many people buy lottery tickets every day hoping to win billions in jackpots, but girls just want the opposite sex, they like to praise them. No, A Japanese. Lu Chang'an shook his head. In fact, the last time he saw Fujiwara Kui was when Bai Hui was teaching everyone to dance. However, Fujiwara Kui's attention was completely on Zhou Shuling at that time and he did not harass her. Beautiful girl. Fujiwara Kui seems to be more interested in beautiful young women, which he and Lu Chang'an, well, have nothing in common with. It turns out they are Japanese, no wonder it feels weird, Bai Hui said with sudden realization. The impression of Japanese people is that of tense office workers. If they are in a leisurely and relaxed state, it will make people feel deliberate and artificial. Extremely awkward. As a well-known 13 network up owner with a strong act culture, don't you have a natural affinity for Japanese and Japanese culture? Lu Chang'an asked with a smile. You are biased. Some people are like that, but I am not. The dances I dance now are mainly based on Chinese-style music. To be honest, the choreography of Chinese-style music is better and more suitable for me. Bai Hui he quickly defended himself and by the way looked forward. He got closer to Lu Chang'an. Being so close, couldn't he smell the perfume she carefully selected today? Couldn't he see her soft and natural lip color, her delicate and soft skin, and her big shining eyes? Every detail was perfect. Is it a look that only beautiful girls can have? Bai Hui thought about her boldness that day from time to time, and the shyness always made her turn into a little bear. She stretched out her claws to dig out the honeycomb, and her whole body was swollen after being stung by bees, but her face was still full of contentment, full of aftertaste. This kind of thing should not be tried frequently. The first time will shock him and make him feel tempted. The second time will inevitably be a bit frivolous and wanton. Normally, the first time the woman takes the initiative, if he is determined, the second time it will be his. It's round. How is your dancing practice going? Lu Chang'an glanced down at Bai Hui's shoes, and then looked away. There seemed to be a residual warm and greasy touch of her heels in his palms. I'm the lead dancer, of course there's no problem, Bai Hui said confidently, but when she saw the way he lowered his head just now, she realized what he said. Bai Hui put her feet together, tiptoed slightly, and whispered, there are people in the community. It's a plum blossom pile. I practice it every day. Let's try it sometime. It was originally agreed that she would dance in the palm of his hand. After the New Year's class reunion, she tried it at the lakeside of Gao Dui's house but failed. He asked her to go back and practice hard. Okay, Lu Chang'an nodded. Bai Hui's mood improved, and he didn't mind that he didn't notice that she was particularly beautiful and fragrant today. He pointed to her earrings and bun, and showed off proudly, I bought a set of themed jewelry. You guess what's the name? Is it really easy for women to make money? Lu Chang'an took a serious guess. Bai Hui's set of jewelry is beautifully made and the price is definitely not cheap. Thinking about the industries owned by Zhou Fenglai Jianmen at that time, the income of women in the consumer industry was also quite high. A famous empress who fell in love with a eunuch had an incomplete consumption of millions in Jianmen Trading Company according to an unscientific ratio conversion. 10,000 guan at that time was equivalent to 4 to 5 million today, and 1 million guan was about 4 to 5 billion. You must know that the mansion built by His Majesty the Emperor for this empress only cost a few 100,000 yuan. At that time, the Zhou Fenglai sword sect was really profitable. Now the industry under Zhou Fenglai Jianmen is pretty good, and the rice noodle shop is booming. Hate, there are 8 pieces in this set of accessories, and the theme is called Chang'an. I bought this set of accessories just because I saw this name. Cranberry showed it to him, and Bai Fen didn't dare to do that now. Express your affection for him implicitly. You can give a set to Dandan. She used to be the city lord of Chang'an City. Lu Chang'an actually didn't see the relationship between Bai Hui's set of accessories and Chang'an. It was probably because Jing Kankan was particularly gorgeous. I bought 2 sets, just to give them to Dan Dan, Bai Hui said with some embarrassment. Although he had gained Dan Dan's favor last time when he played cards with Dan Dan, Bai Hui was not proud of it. We still have to keep working hard. Lu Chang'an turned his head and glanced at the RV. Shang Guandandan did not get out of the car. She appeared on the viewing balcony of the RV with a majestic expression. She was sitting there upright and condescending, as if she still looked like the owner of Vyang Palace back then. Lu Chang'an was inevitably a little emotional, but he knew that there was no need to commiserate with Shang Guandandan about the emotions caused by this. At this time, Shang Guandandan was probably just reminiscing about the good cards she had played recently, or comparing them. The pros and cons of her daughters-in-law, the majesty on their faces have nothing to do with what they think in their hearts. Hui, as if sensing the attention of Lu Chang'an and Bai Hui, Shang Guandandan waved towards Bai Hui and signaled Bai Hui to come over. I am coming. Bai Hui quickly trotted into the RV again. Lu Chang'an shook his head and turned around to find that Fujiwara Kui's target today seemed to be Zhou Shuling. He did not go directly to Zhou Shuling, but walked around the flower bed and then came to Zhou Dongdong. Fujiwara Kui's trip to Gunsa was not for the purpose of hunting for beauty, but if there were some romance stories during the trip to a foreign country, who would reject it? During his time in Gunsa, Fujiwara Kui found that the women here were almost at two extremes. They either chased him very passionately, or resisted extremely coldly. Zhou Shuling, who he wanted to get close to, belonged to the second type, but this gentle one, even if the woman resists and avoids, she still has the implicitness and etiquette of traditional women, which makes people more fond of her. Fujiwara Kui prefers mature and gentle women in Japan, and the success rate of seduction is also quite high. After all, the cheating rate of Japanese housewives is as high as 50%. This is a country where men are somewhat tainted. Fujiwara Kui knew very well that women like Zhou Shuling could not be captured with his usual methods. It was best to start with her children. In single-mother families in this country, after gaining the favor of the children, he could then gain the favor of the single mothers. Seems much simpler. So he brought a customized version of Ultraman toy. It can be said to be an intelligent robot in the shape of Ultraman. It has very powerful human-computer interaction functions. Not to mention children, even adults cannot resist its charm. Kids, do you like Ultraman? Fujiwara Kui asked his assistant with a smile while showing off the various functions of Ultraman. Uncle, are you a Japanese? Zhou Dongdong remembered seeing this man. It was the first time Zhou Dongdong saw a Japanese in real life. I am Japanese. Fujiwara Kui recalled the first time he met this child. Zhou Shuling was there at that time. After Zhou Shuling recognized that he was Japanese, the child ran away in fright. But now that Ultraman is here, her reaction is obviously different. Is this Ultraman? Zhou Dongdong looked at it twice and asked with some vigilance. Fujiwara Kui nodded patiently. Didn't I just tell you? Ouch, Ultraman has been captured by the Japanese. Everyone, run. Zhou Dongdong turned around and ran away. The Japanese were so scary. Even Ultraman was captured by them. Fortunately, Songdazi was not there. Play here, otherwise a little Ultraman like Songdazi would definitely be captured by the Japanese. Songdazi's Ultraman suit Zhou Dongdong couldn't wear, so Zhou Dongdong didn't turn into a little Ultraman, otherwise will be taken away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 871. Zhou Dongdong waved his two round fists without caring about maintaining a smart and brave pace. Holding his breath, he ran behind Lu Chang'an and finally breathed with relief. Ultraman was captured by the Japanese, but Chang and brother who had eaten the zodiac must not be afraid of the Japanese. When Zhou Dongdong grows up, he will also have to eat the 12 zodiac signs. Lu Sin saw Zhou Dongdong running away, and after screaming twice, he didn't know where the threat came from. After looking around, he straightened up, kicked Ultraman with his two front paws, then grabbed the ground with his back paws and turned around with a slight slip. After stabilizing his body, he quickly ran to Zhou Dongdong's side to protect him. Lu Xin is no longer what he used to be, but his instinct as a guard dog remains. The staff member holding Ultraman stumbled, and Ultraman fell on top of him. Lasers shot out from his eyes and swayed in the air, like laser rain. Fujiwara Kuai was also startled. Fortunately, this black dog as big as a calf only kicked the servants. When I saw this dog for the first time, I just thought that a dog of this size was just a ferocious example. But when I saw it again today, I felt that it was a strange beast, an extraordinary creature. Brother Chang'an, brother, Ultraman has been captured. If you can't defeat the Japanese, do you want to ask Sister Dandan to help? Zhou Dongdong looked back. Just now, Sister Dandan was sitting majestically on the roof of the car, just like the Monkey King in Journey to the West. Do you think Sister Dandan is better than me? Lu Chang'an was very angry. He was indeed a stupid child. Don't you know that he was originally ranked 5th in the world, but after defeating Tesla, he is at least 4th in the world? Shangguan Dandan? Just a little bird. No, but Sister Dandan is your mother, and mothers will protect their children, Zhou Dongdong said with certainty, just like his own mother who would only lower her head when she was bullied by others in the past. Zhou Dongdong couldn't defeat the people who bullied his mother, so he could only eat a lot of food and hope that he would grow up quickly and protect his mother. But when others bully Zhou Dongdong, my mother will suddenly become the bravest person in the world, not afraid of anyone. Sister Dandan is Brother Chang'an's mother, so she must be like this. I'm too lazy to tell you. Go find her in the car. Lu Chang'an waved his hand and sent Zhou Dongdong away. Brother Chang'an asked him to call someone, and Zhou Dongdong ao went. Fujiwara Kuai put one hand in his pocket. He seemed to feel a little embarrassed after being frightened by the dog. He pulled up his collar, restored his elegant and peaceful appearance, and then smiled and said hello to Lu Chang'an. He already has a new understanding of Lu Chang'an. There is a Chinese saying, know yourself and the enemy, and you will be victorious in 100 battles. This is from the strategy chapter of Sun Tzu that Fujiwara Kuei is very fond of. The summary of this passage is war leads to destruction. This is true not only in the art of war, but also in conquering and winning in any field. Fujiwara Kuei believes that it is precisely because such wise mottos in the Central Plains culture have been spread and educated as a kind of common sense, so that almost all Chinese people understand this truth, that the rejuvenation of China has become inevitable. Other ethnic groups lack these general communication and education that enhance the overall national ideological level, and their rise or revival becomes random, relying on the accidental ability of certain individuals to explode. The same is true for the Yamato nation. Fujiwara Kuei does not think that such China is unique. The Yamato nation is generally close and superior in some aspects. In this future world, everything will be different now. Fujiwara Kuei would occasionally say this to the Chinese people he came into contact with. Seeing their surprised and flattered expressions, and even their retorts, Fujiwara Kuei always smiled and thought, I wonder if they would think of what Cao and Liu Bei said. Many Japanese are fond of the history and culture of the Three Kingdoms. Fujiwara Kuei recently read an article by a professor named Liu from Hunan University on Cao's poetry. The article mentioned that Cao's harm to the powerful family at that time caused his image to be very ugly in the writings of literati. This was an angle that Fujiwara Kuei had not paid attention to before. Fujiwara Kuei often compares himself to Cao. He feels that some of his preferences are very similar to Cao, such as those beautiful sisters-in-law. Mr. Long, we meet again. Fujiwara Kuei smiled and nodded, and said to Lu Chang'an. The young man in front of him has already impressed Fujiwara Kuei. Fujiwara Kuei saw a temperament similar to his own in the other person. A young man who lived in the city and had the same home life as an ordinary college student actually made Fujiwara Kui feel that he was the same person as him. This was already extremely high. Appreciated. When Fujiwara Kui was collecting information about Zhou Shuling, he also got to know Lu Chang'an. This was exactly the effect he wanted: to know yourself and the enemy, even if he was pursuing a woman. After learning about Lu Chang'an, Fujiwara Kui felt that Lu Chang'an was a very interesting person. When he told Wu Qinglian that he and Lu Chang'an were the same kind of people, Wu Qinglian was obviously shocked and then fell silent. After all, Wu Qinglian knew very well the identity and status of Fujiwara Kui, and he himself was not qualified to receive such high praise from Fujiwara Kui. Of course, this is just talk. Fujiwara Kui thinks Lu Chang'an is interesting, but the objective reality is that status has brought about a huge gap. Sometimes, no matter how similar they are, the difference is the analogy between Einstein and a stupid elementary school student. "Why do you call me Dragon Lord?" Lu Chang'an asked in confusion. Fujiwara Kui tried to pursue Zhou Shuling and told Lu Chang'an the story of Dragon. These two stupid things left a deep impression on Fujiwara Kui. Many things have a good starting point, but if you choose the wrong execution object, it will look stupid. This is one of the reasons why the phrase "I also have good intentions" sounds extremely disgusting. We met in a bookstore last time and discussed the story about dragons saving ancient humans. Fujiwara Kui humbly helped the other party recall. In fact, it was not a discussion, but Fujiwara Kui's unilateral narration. Considering that the other party, as a Chinese, did not know the legends of his ancestors, it would be a bit embarrassing for Fujiwara Kui to tell them, so Fujiwara Kui used the word discuss. "Oh, because I said I was the dragon, so you call me Dragon Lord." Lu Chang'an understood. "Just a little joke." Fujiwara Kui smiled. "Are you kidding me? I really am that dragon. If he were not the dragon, then how could it look stupid for Fujiwara Kui to tell Lu Chang'an the dragon story?" The smile on Fujiwara Kui's face stopped for a moment. "Is this, as long as I'm not embarrassed, you will be the one who is embarrassed?" In Fujiwara Kui's social environment, he is really not good at this. It's just that this man is actually close to the two eldest ladies of Guncha, whom even Fujiwara Kui has to pay attention to, so the smile on Fujiwara Kui's face has not dissipated now. Of course, Fujiwara Kui's information on Lu Chang'an was just paying attention to the other party's social circle. He would not really investigate whether Lu Chang'an might be the dragon. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 872. The last time in the bookstore, Fujiwara Kui saw Lu Chang'an and Zhou Dongdong attacking each other with a soft, tongue-like ice cream in their mouths. At that time, he thought Zhou Dongdong was Lu Chang'an's child. Both of them seemed to have low IQs. Later, he found out that Lu Chang'an was actually a college student from a famous local school. The child was not impressive at all. He was an ignorant primary school student and could only be called special. The place was just Fujiwara Kui's first impression of her, a little swollen. "Long Kun, that's why I call you Dragon Kun." Fujiwara Kui easily resolved the other party's nonsensical conversational style. Why did such a man attract Qinyanan and Zhu Huntang to frequent him? This is still a mystery. Is it just because of Lu Chang'an's excellent appearance? Absolutely impossible. Now that you have recognized my true identity, let me ask you a question frankly. Do you know what the ultimate harmony of life means? Lu Chang'an said, looking at the faint smile on Fujiwara Kui's face. In fact, people who always have a smile on their face feel good when you first get in touch with them, but after getting along with them for a long time, it will make people feel that such people are wearing masks all the time, and their smiles look more like fake smiles. Lu Chang'an thought of Dong Fangshuo. Dong Fangshuo, like Fujiwara Kui, always had a smile on his face and called himself the Immortal. However, later this title became exclusive to Li Bai, and he also said the phrase "the great hidden in the palace." In short, this kind of people like to pretend to be happy, and it makes them uncomfortable to see the smiles on their faces. So one day Lu Chang'an made a bet with Dong Fangshuo while he was drunk, and let Dong Fangshuo urinate in Emperor Wu's hall. From then on, the faint smile that always hung on Dong Fangshuo's face disappeared. Therefore, the protagonist in today's novels is always faint, and changing the perspective will make people feel so annoying. The ultimate harmony of life, Fujiwara Kuai showed a thoughtful expression to match the other party, frowning slightly to express confusion. The ultimate harmony of life is stability. I like stability and pursue stability. Only stability can allow this world to continue safely. One of the reasons why Lu Chang'an must eliminate Tesla is that the Earth is already very unstable. She just wants to create more unstable factors, affecting the living environment and reproduction of humans. Fujiwara Kuai is also another unstable factor in a stable state. You are right. Fujiwara Kuai smiled and nodded. Lu Chang'an glanced at Fujiwara Kuai's expression. He had a typical Japanese expression. He was dealing with the person he was talking to in a serious manner, not wanting to offend anyone, and he was completely disapproving. What I have always pursued in the general direction is the ultimate harmony of life. When it comes to the small things in life, I also like a stable state, such as a stable cooperative relationship. Lu Chang'an pointed to the place where Zhou Dongdong escaped just now. Direction. Zhou Dongdong escaped into the car. To support him in a fight, of course he had to find Sister Dandan who could tie up Brother Chang'an. Zhou Shuling's fighting ability was not much better than Zhou Dongdong under normal circumstances. Zhou Dongdong can at least use one move of flesh bomb attack, and Zhou Shuling seems to be able to do it as well, but if she uses it, it will only further arouse the opponent's captive's fighting spirit and the exciting aura that enhances her combat effectiveness. Zhou Shuling also used a short-range, half-range meat bomb attack on Lu Chang'an. It was the day when it snowed in Junxia during the Spring Festival. She stood at the entrance of the corridor and watched Zhou Dongdong rolling in the snow. Lu Chang'an was pushed into the snow by Zhou Shuling. Hey, it was him who allowed her to make this move take effect. If she used this move on others, Lu Chang'an thought for a while and cleared this idea from his mind. We seem to have a lot in common with each other unexpectedly. I also like stable cooperative relationships. Many of our cooperative relationships in China are very stable and last for decades. Fujiwara Kuai smiled faintly. Of course, I knew that the cooperative relationship Lu Chang'an mentioned was actually the rice noodle shop. It's indeed a bit funny, but Fujiwara Kuai is not willing to show his arrogance, and even made an analogy to the Fujiwara family's layout in China. Your relationship is one of comprador and profit transfer. I mean, you are pursuing Zhou Shuling. If you succeed, our cooperative relationship will be destroyed and the stable state will be gone. I don't like it. Lu Chang'an frowned. He frowned and paused, then added, in your capacity, you won't allow her to continue running such a millet noodle shop, right? Since Long Jun is honest and knows that I am pursuing her, I also promise not to interfere with her career. Whether she runs a millet noodle shop or a multinational group, it is her freedom, Fujiwara Kuai said sincerely. It's just whether there is something wrong with Lu Chang'an's brain. The heroine of the Fujiwara family will not be allowed to run such a rice noodle shop. But how could Fujiwara Kuai marry Zhou Shuling? He just needs a Chinese lover. That's right. Lu Chang'an nodded, feeling that Fujiwara Kuai was a little ungrateful. Could it be that he was too reserved? Lu Chang'an just wanted to reason with Fujiwara Kuai and stop him from doing stupid things. He had good intentions. There used to be a person who looked very similar to you. His name was Go Shanhai. Lu Chang'an recalled. He also pursued Zhou Shuling. No, it cannot be said that he was pursuing Zhou Shuling. He just felt that his conditions were very good and looked down on Zhou Shuling. I was married and had a child. He said Zhou Dongdong was a dragster. Do you know what a dragster means? Anyway, I had a good talk with him and he realized his mistake and finally apologized. Stop pestering Zhou Shuling. I know the word tart. It's good that he can realize his mistakes. Otherwise, it will be difficult for me to forgive him, that, ahem, what a cute child he is, Fujiwara-ku, I said, unable to accept it. Frankly speaking, if it were me, even if I couldn't regard her child as my own, I would at least be able to empathize with my own children and the children of others. Lu Chang'an nodded expressionlessly, and told the story of how Zhou Shuling's biological mother brought her stepson and his stepson's leader to a blind date during the Spring Festival, but was eventually persuaded to leave by Lu Chang'an. This is too much, Fujiwara-ku said indignantly. Do mothers completely regard their daughters as tools? They are too selfish and self-righteous, and they have not considered Xiaoling at all. If it were me. Before Fujiwara-ku finished speaking, Lu Chang finally raised his leg unbearably and kicked Fujiwara-ku into the flower bed. I have never seen such a stupid person. Lu Chang'an has been very patient and implicitly expressed that he is not suitable for Zhou Shuling and should not do such stupid things like pursuing Zhou Shuling again. Why didn't he listen to the advice? You, do you know what you are doing? Fujiwara-ku's assistant looked at Lu Chang'an in shock. As the first heir of Japan's top chaebol, Fujiwara-ku was treated with great courtesy in any country and had never met Lu Chang'an. I have been in this situation before, and if it is not handled properly, it will definitely turn into a diplomatic incident. Japs, hearing the Frog Island accent, Lu Chang'an didn't feel close to Zhu Huntang because of his relationship with him. He raised his legs and swept the garbage that allied countries were shocked into the flower bed. Only then did Lu Chang'an let out a long breath and his thoughts became clearer. He didn't originally intend to kick Fujiwara-ku, but what he said was so nice, so gentle, considerate, and he looked like Zhou Shuling was a good match, so that Lu Chang'an couldn't find fault. Wasn't he expressing Lu Chang'an's opinion that he was not a good match for Zhou Shuling? Is your judgment wrong? There seemed to be nothing wrong with this kick because he was so disrespectful. Lu Chang'an thought for a while and confirmed this. When he turned around, he found that Zhou Dongdong had called two mothers to help. I spent the past 2 days wandering around outside, finding a resettlement camp and starting a new chapter. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 873. Fujiwara-ku climbed up, his body covered with fallen leaves and twigs. In March, Juncha felt damp, cold, gray and black everywhere. The soil in the flower bed accumulated a winter of dead branches and leaves, clinging to his body. The heir to the Fujiwara family has never been so embarrassed. He saw Zhou Shuling walking in front of him. There was nothing profound, interesting, or elegant about this beautiful young woman that attracted Fujiwara-ku, but he just wanted her. She is very shallow, very ordinary, and very tacky, but combined with her plump and round body, it seems to exude the fragrance of meat. Mixed with the aura of the market, it could ignite Fujiwara-ku's extremely strong desire. Because there are few women that he can't get, Fujiwara-ku hasn't had this feeling of strong desire but unattainable desire for a long time. He knew very well that after he really got her, it might be boring, but isn't this the process that he enjoys most of the time? It's a pity that when I investigated clearly and was confident that I knew myself and the enemy, and officially started chasing her, she saw myself in such an embarrassing state. Fujiwara-ku hid the coldness in his eyes, intending to portray the magnanimity of a child from a wealthy family. He turned around to show a helpless and uncaring expression to Lu Chang'an, but was caught by a look. A beautiful girl with an icy aura was staring at him. Her skin is as fair as milk ice cream that has just been torn open, exuding a cold and soft whiteness. Her delicate appearance is like a perfect work that a great artist spent his whole life carving, and it is still dazzling even at night when there are no spotlights. After a brief eye contact, the girl turned her head, hugged her strangely big pot and started drinking. her intimidating temperament just disappeared. Strange, am I having an illusion? Fujiwara Kui was in a daze for a moment. Brother Chang'an, are you injured? Zhou Dongdong held Lu Chang'an's thigh, raised his head and asked with concern. Compared to Zhou Dongdong, his mother and sister Dandan didn't seem to be too afraid of the Japanese, so they took their time to come. It was a bit slow, which greatly delayed Zhou Dongdong's plan to save his brother Chang'an. Is this child blind? Fujiwara Kui reluctantly stood up straight and patted the dirt on his body. He felt uncomfortable after receiving such a kick. Fortunately, although Fujiwara Kui did not have any strong strength, his physical fitness, especially his ability to resist blows and relieve pain, was still quite good. Not bad. No, go and see if Ultraman is injured. Lu Chang'an pointed at Ultraman, who was thrown aside, and said. Zhou Dongdong quickly went to save Ultraman. What's going on with this Japanese? Zhou Shuling tugged on Lu Chang'an's sleeve and lowered her voice and said, why did you get into a fight with him? Zhou Shuling had some impressions of this Japanese. She seemed to have tried to tease Lu Sin last time, but was bitten by Lu Sin. She was so frightened that she peed. She didn't know if she had received a rabies vaccine. I don't know what to think. When a normal person meets a big dog like Lu Sin, he will definitely stay away from him, but since he is Japanese, he cannot be called a normal person. Thinking of this, Zhou Shuling felt relieved. No, Lu Chang'an denied this. When fighting, it usually emphasizes that you come and go with me, and describes fighting with each other. I just kicked him, causing his physical displacement, and it does not count as a fight. After all, Zhou Shuling has not read many books, so inaccurate wording is inevitable. Lu Chang'an must correct her to avoid misunderstandings. Bai Hui, help me put on the mascara, please help me take a look. Zhou Shuling's attention was diverted. Just now she was worried about not brushing her eyelashes well. When she saw Bai Hui coming back, she quickly asked for help. As a result, Bai Hui just simply with a few random touches, Zhou Shuling's troubles were solved. Feeling that her eyes were very watery, Zhou Shuling wanted Lu Chang'an to take a look. Lu Chang'an glanced at it, then nodded without saying anything. Zhou Shuling knew that this was the case, and secretly made up her mind to study hard and read more books when she went back. After all, appearance may not be attractive to Lu Chang'an, but he still appreciates women with scholarly connotations. For example, Professor Lu is Zhou Shuling's idol, and even Dandan often recites poems. Fujiwara Kui saw Zhou Shuling whispering to Lu Chang'an, and immediately understood that Lu Chang'an suddenly intervened because he and Zhou Shuling had an affair. Haha, it turns out that the tree-lined path you thought was already busy with other people's traffic. So Fujiwara Kui hid the gloom in his heart, withdrew his cold gaze, bowed slightly and prepared to turn around and leave. Stop! A cold and slightly girlish voice sounded, and Fujiwara Kui turned around. It was the girl holding the pot who was elegantly dressed. What are you looking at? Shangguan Dandan raised her chin slightly and frowned slightly. She was a kind, gentle, dignified and elegant queen mother, but that didn't mean that she would tolerate other people's thoughtful glances. If you have something to say, just say it, as if I have an opinion but I don't want to tell you, so you can do it for yourself. Do you think you are my moth? Only my moth can do this. No, I'm just a little disappointed. China is a country of etiquette, but what you did is not the way to treat guests. Fujiwara Kui looked directly at Shangguan Dandan without being humble or arrogant. I asked myself that I didn't do anything wrong, but I being slighted and insulted. If you were in Japan, you would definitely feel what a country of etiquette is. Oh, when you treat the Japanese, you never need to be stingy and have the greatest malice. You don't need to do anything wrong to treat you like this. Because when what you do is known, it has often caused irreparable damage. The consequences, then you just bowed. Lu Chang'an said with great regret, you even breathed wrong, but it would be quite interesting if you took a breath and then bowed to apologize for your breathing. No matter how much Fujiwara-kui can tolerate, he is still a young man with strong blood. As the heir of the Fujiwara family, the display of cultivation and magnanimity is just a necessary performance, and it does not mean that he can accept it at any time. The sarcasm that came to your face. The voice in his throat stopped abruptly after he uttered one word. A short strand of hair flew from Shangguan Dandan's body, inserted into Fujiwara-kui's neck, and then blended into his skin. Fujiwara-kui grabbed his neck in shock. His skin was as usual, without any abnormalities. But just now he saw with his own eyes a strand of Shangguan Dandan's hair flying over and sticking to his skin, but now it disappeared without a trace. No trace left. Fujiwara-kui's assistant crawled over and hurriedly checked for his master, but found nothing. "What did you do to me?" Fujiwara-jijing looked at Shangguan Dandan in surprise. Shangguan Dandan straightened his arms and palms, and pressed down gently with a few slender white fingers. Fujiwara-jijing's body suddenly seemed to be pressed by an invisible force, and the bones all over his body seemed to be broken with clicks. With the sound, Fujiwara-kui's legs weakened, his knees hit the floor, and he knelt down heavily. "This is a great favor from the Emperor, and you should kneel down to express your gratitude. The strand of hair I just wore can be integrated into your body. If I want you to be in pain, you will never be happy, and if I want you to die, you will never be able to live." After saying that, Shangguan Dandan glanced at Lu Chang'an gently, hoping that he could understand the Empress's understanding and gentleness. Lu Chang'an once said that you can't kill people casually, you have to find a corner where there is no one to kill, but now the corner where there is no one actually means a blind corner without camera surveillance, which is too difficult to find. Shangguan Dandan had no choice but to come up with such a way, all to relieve the crisis of Lu Chang'an's hair being dyed green. He hoped that he could understand the mother's difficulties and good intentions, and take the initiative to touch his head instead of asking her to use her eyes to indicate that he was pregnant. Indifferent for minutes. What? Fujiwara-kui was wondering if the other party was threatening him, and was about to struggle to stand up. Suddenly he remembered the strange beast in Gunsa, and grabbed his assistant's arm in panic, gritting his teeth and said, "Let's go." The assistant quickly helped Fujiwara-kui and then hurried away with him on his back. Lu Chang'an raised his hand and touched Shangguan Dandan's head, mainly her hair. Shangguan Dandan was so magical, like a monster. Isn't this method considered a monster? A normal person like Lu Chang'an would never be able to fly out a strand of hair and control the other person like an ironworm parasitizes. It would be terrifying and disgusting. My pocket money should be increased again. Shangguan Dandan realized that he had made a great contribution and quickly made a request. Lu Chang'an withdrew his hand and touched his ears. Due to sudden tinnitus and deafness, he heard nothing. Shangguan Dandan was furious and pinched Lu Chang'an's waist hard. "I finally left. I thought he was someone's friend and came to see us dance in the square." Zhou Shuling breathed a sigh of relief and then quietly handed Shangguan Dandan $200. Shangguan Dandan opened his mouth and was about to bite Lu Chang'an's neck and hang on him until the end of the square dance competition. When he saw the $200, he quickly let go and took it. He flicked his finger on the palm of his hand and the $200 were gone. He slid it into his arm pockets along his arms, then raised his hands to straighten his sleeves, elegantly and without any fuss. "Why do you always carry cash with you?" Of course, Lu Chang'an couldn't hide these small tricks. Shangguan Dandan patted his sleeve pocket and saw that the money had been put into his pocket, and he suddenly felt proud. When you are with children, if you don't bring cash, you can only say, "What do you want to eat? What do you want to buy?" and I will buy it for you. This seems insincere. If you really want to be nice to others, just take it. It is more sincere to let others buy the money themselves. Zhou Shuling said with deep impression, "When I was a child, some relatives would secretly give you money, while others would ask your uncles and aunts to buy you what you wanted to eat and buy. Which one do you like? What do you want to eat? Uncle will buy it for you. Lu Chang'an remembered several similar scenes in which he teased little girls, but he did not tease Zhou Shuling so nakedly. Hate it, I'm not Dong Dong. Zhou Shuling hit Lu Chang'an and said coquettishly, but I want to drink apple-flavored Fanta. Lu Chang'an nodded and prepared to buy some drinks. Zhu Huntang's RV certainly had water prepared, but it probably didn't have the apple-flavored Fanta that Zhou Shuling wanted. Watching Lu Chang'an walk away, Zhou Shuling went to catch Zhou Dongdong. She was walking around Ultraman, who was lying on the ground. She pressed Ultraman's chest for a while, and then moved towards Ultraman's chest for a while. Blow into the nostrils. At this time, Zhu Huntang, Lu Yuang, and Zhong Qing also arrived. After greeting each other, everyone was attracted by this huge Ultraman, so Zhou Shuling, Shang Guandandan, and Zhou Dongdong told what happened just now. Said it again. These three people talked about one thing, but to everyone's ears they seemed to be three unrelated things. It was extremely confusing. Finally, Lu Yuang concluded, the Japanese robbed us of so many things, and today we defeated one Japanese, then the Ultraman he left behind is our trophy. Since it is a trophy, it belongs to Zhou Dongdong. Everyone thinks that what Lu Yuang said makes sense, especially Zhou Shuling, who feels a little emotional. She is worthy of being a professor, and she is not inferior to Lu Chang'an in speaking truth. Zhu Huntang pushed everyone away and told them to keep their distance from Ultraman, and then made a phone call. I'm here at the Helong Stadium. There is an Ultraman here who is related to the Japanese. Come and check the safety. To see if there are any problems such as nuclear radiation, eavesdropping, positioning, remote control, etc. After making the call, Zhu Huntang explained to everyone and said cautiously, you have to be careful about Japanese products. I never even use Japanese cosmetics. There may be radiation, and you can't eat Japanese products. It's so difficult. I came to Sanya on my own. I used to stay in celebrity hotels like the Edition. Yesterday I stayed next to the construction site. The wall cutting machine worked until 9:30, and I felt completely dizzy. Once the habit of daily updating is formed, there is no update yesterday, and my heart feels guilty and I have insomnia. I want to get up early to update. Please double the monthly ticket. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 874. After Bai Hui helped an old woman put on a modified short horse skirt, she hurried over. It felt like everyone was participating in some group activity, and Bai Hui wanted to actively participate in it, so as not to feel excluded because she couldn't have a tacit understanding with everyone on the topic of this activity. Girls are very sensitive to this situation. They want to integrate into various circles, and they are also keen to actively establish a circle with themselves as the core, or at least with relatively important people. This is also one of the reasons why a girls' dormitory can establish quite a few WeChat groups. So here comes the question. Now there are 6 people here: Shang Guandandan, Bai Hui, Lu Yuang, Zhong Qing, Zhou Shuling, and Zhu Huntang. Can primary school student Zhou Dongdong calculate how many WeChat groups they can create in total? The answer is very simple. To form a group with 3 or more members, the calculation process is C66 equal 1, C56 equals C16 equals 6, C46 equals C26 equals 65, /21 equal 15, C36 equals 654, /321 equal 20. The process is very simple, but it is also beyond Zhou Dongdong's ability. After all, many college students and college graduates can't do math. They will only say, keep scolding me. Zhou Dongdong can join a group randomly, So how many WeChat groups can be created because of Zhou Dongdong's existence and joining? After all, we have to consider that because of Zhou Dongdong's joining, Zhou Shuling may be so angry that she quits the group, and Lu Yuwang may drag An Nuan into the group. The addition of An Nuan will make the situation more complicated, so the final result is that the problems between women are unsolvable. After Zhu Huntang finished speaking, he saw everyone's scared expressions and nodded with satisfaction. Among the girls and women present, only myself and Shang Guandandan were witty, so of course I had to shoulder the responsibility of protecting everyone. After all, here are the girls and women that the old man loves, even if they are not now, I am afraid they will be in the future. Zhu Huntang knew very well that he was the kind of person who talked less and did more, and was very good. He didn't know when Lu Chang'an would realize her good intentions and simply give her the position of the leader of the Zhou Fenglai sword sect. When he thought that he would inherit a mysterious, ancient, and legendary force with thousands of years of history, Zhu Huntang couldn't help but want to immediately seek to usurp the throne. Is there any prince in the world who has lived for 60 years? Zhu Huntang even somewhat understood Charles's mood. However, Lu Chang'an may not necessarily pass the position to him, and Lu Mime is also a strong rival. I still have to stabilize the basic base of Shang Guandandan's favor to be more confident. After all, if Dandan can take care of Lu Chang'an, at worst, he will become an orthodox Kyushu Fenglai sword sect in the future. Combining his own financial resources with Dandan's military force, he might become so powerful that the world would recognize him as orthodox. The ugly country can become a beacon of freedom and democracy, and there is no doubt that the orthodox Kyushu Fenglai Jianmen will occupy the bird's nest. Of course, this is just a last resort and a last resort. At present, it seems that there is still hope for him to inherit the position of the leader of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect. As long as she gives him a sufficient harem and has no time for him to take care of her, and is so busy every day that Zhu Huntang's opportunity will come. Ha ha ha, I am really an insidious and cunning fairy sheep. Xiao Tang, when you want to do bad things, you should pay attention to your expression and don't be too distorted. Shang Guandandan turned his head and glanced at Zhu Huntang. It was not a warning, but an education and guidance. Shang Guandandan felt a little emotional. Lu Chang'an really liked the nanny as always. Except for Xiao Tang, there was no woman present who was not the Fengshan Fi type. After careful sensing, only Zhongqing had no essence in her body. Generally speaking, this kind of secretary-type woman is often the type who is most likely to betray or be pushed down. Zhongqing is like the personal maid of the rich lady in ancient times. When she marries, she must be accompanied by a dowry. Sooner or later, she will be her uncle's wife. It is also a bit like a trusted maid next to a beloved concubine. In order to maintain the favor or increase the number of times the emperor comes to a certain palace, he will often drag this most trustworthy maid into bed and serve the emperor together. Although Xiao Tang is not a member of Lu Chang'an's harem, Zhongqing does have similar status and opportunities. Zhongqing often invited Lu Chang'an to barbecue, and also brought Shang Guandandan and Zhou Dongdong with him. Shang Guandandan felt that he should help Zhongqing. Hey, Zhu Huntang yelled casually to cover up the embarrassment of being exposed by Shang Guandandan. He was just a little carried away. Normally, he must hide his sinisterness and viciousness under his calm and beautiful face. No one would have thought that he was that kind of femme fatale. By the way, I didn't expect you to come to lead the dance. As a young female college student, you can actively participate in entertainment activities for the elderly in the community. It is very commendable. Lu Yuwang came to observe Bai Hui. When she was in Anyuan High School, Lu Yuwang attended a parent-teacher meeting and met Bai Hui several times at the high school affiliated to Hunan University. Girls in school always wore school uniforms. They were pretty, but from Lu Yuwang's perspective, they were not that stunning. She herself is a stunning beauty that thousands of young men, old and dead, can't forget, and her eyesight is naturally extraordinary. It wasn't until the last comic exhibition, when Lu Yuwang saw Bai Hui's large poster, that he felt impressed. But posters are posters after all. Only when he saw the real person did he feel that An Nuan's vigilance against Bai Hui was not exaggerated. She is cute, with a pair of watery peach blossom eyes. She looks like she is smiling and seducing everyone. This is different from her cousin. Her cousin is the cool type, with no expression on her face or thinking seriously about problems. At that time, it basically exuded the feeling of keep away from strangers. It's no wonder that this white fennel has become an internet celebrity. These peach blossom eyes seem to be firing towards the audience outside the screen all the time. I'm just here to help. Mainly because Sister Xiaoling said she was nervous about leading the dance alone, Bai Hui said with a smile, also looking at Lu Yuwang. The source of everything must be the woman in front of him. Without her, there would be no Anyuan. When she was in high school, Bai Hui knew that An Nuan had a beautiful mother, and her class teacher Huang Shan was a loyal fan of Lu Yuwang. Huang Shan always seized every opportunity to communicate with Lu Yuwang. If An Nuan hadn't had this kind of relationship, maybe he would have been the monitor of Bai Hui. An Nuan would have been a sports committee member or something like that. 3 years, all 3 years, Bai Hui felt vaguely suppressed by An Nuan. That's why Bai Hui cared so much about the rumor that Lu Chang'an saw Bai Hui and fell down the stairs when he was in school. An Nuan, don't you have a good relationship with Lu Chang'an? He is obsessed with wrestling by me. Now that I think about it, I find it ridiculous. I was so naive during my 3 years in high school. I only came to my senses after graduation and seem to have grown a lot. But am I really not that ridiculous now? It might not be even more ridiculous, at least I was very proud when I was in high school, but now? Sometimes I feel quite humble. It's just the pride that keeps a distant and indifferent distance from him, and the humility that is intimate and ambiguous. It seems obvious which one to choose. Bai Hui thought of this and puffed up her chest. Lu Chang'an said that An Nuan dances like a mantis boxing. It seems that only your dance deserves his praise, otherwise he wouldn't come to see you. Lu Yuwang showed an expectant expression. I will appreciate it later. Thinking about it carefully, An Nuan is so wary of Bai Hui, and this Bai Hui probably has the same feelings towards An Nuan. As An Nuan's mother, she personally attends the scene, and she doesn't know if Bai Hui will be nervous and make mistakes on the spot. That's okay, I'm so sorry. Bai Hui secretly became vigilant. Maybe he was overthinking it. Professor Liu's words were a bit yin and yang, and he would have to show his full strength later. Bai Hui, don't be nervous, just perform normally. Zhongqing quickly comforted Bai Hui. Professor Liu next to him seemed to have grasped something important. His tone of voice and eyes showed a sense of confidence, full of pointing fingers. A sense of superiority. Could it be that she knows that her little cousin also likes Lu Chang'an, so she is fighting for her daughter? Zhongqing was quite dissatisfied. If Professor Liu knew some of Lu Chang'an's secrets, would he still have the confidence to complain? For a man like Lu Chang'an, no woman is qualified to monopolize him. After all, even the master he admired the most has failed. The third wife has not returned to Juncha and has been staying in Antarctica. The real reason has not been told to Zhongqing, but Zhongqing has an intuition that it is related to Lu Chang'an. Why is Bai Hui nervous? But as you are talking, I am getting a little nervous. Zhou Shuling looked around. If Lu Chang'an was around at this time, she would tug on his sleeves or get scolded by him, and Zhou Shuling would feel at ease. Come down. Lu Chang'an bought some apple-flavored Fanta and some orange juice for himself. Seeing so many people talking around Ultraman, he smiled and said, Ultraman must be under a lot of pressure when you guys watch him like this. Zhou Shuling took the Fanta that Lu Chang'an handed over and found that he had actually bought his own drink and Zhou Shuling's drink. She felt a little embarrassed and quickly turned around and drank in a sip without pulling his sleeves, but no longer nervous. I prevented a biological crisis. Zhu Huntang quickly came to report his credit. What? Lu Chang'an didn't expect that such a big thing would happen when he bought 2 bottles of drinks. At this time, the people Zhu Huntang called had already arrived, and got the Ultraman lying on the ground into the car, preparing to take it to a professional institution for inspection. After all, this was something the eldest lady personally ordered, and it must be treated with caution, so he took the instrument. It's definitely not possible to just take a look at the scene. Brother Chang'an, will Ultraman be imprisoned? Zhou Dongdong held Lu Chang'an's thigh and asked with concern. She was afraid of the Japanese, but she was completely different from Ultraman. Man is an alien and not Japanese. Songdazi thinks that Ultraman is also Japanese, but Zhou Dongdong doesn't think so. If Ultraman were Japanese, why would he always fight in Japan? If I have the opportunity to fight against little monsters, I will definitely not fight here in Junsha every day. I will also fly to Japan to fight. No, we have defeated the Japanese, and Ultraman is ours. Let the fairy sister check it out, and then give Ultraman to you, Lu Chang'an said. Ouch. In the last few hours of the double monthly ticket, please support me. If the monthly ticket reaches 3,000 yuan, Xiahua can draw another prize, maybe 1,000 yuan. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Can Ru Xiahua. Chapter 875. The square dance competition was grandly held at the Heilong Gymnasium. The Deputy Director of the District Housing and Urban Rural Development Bureau, the Director of the District Housing Security Service Center, Director Chen of the Civilization Office, the Publicity Committee member of the Street Group, the Principal of Xingxiang Primary School, the Principal of Xingxiang Kindergarten, and the General Manager of Beilong Center Property Zhang Salmon's Dream, and hundreds of community party members attended the event. The contestants were mainly middle-aged and elderly people, showing their spiritual appearance of loving the party and patriotism, being positive, civilized and harmonious. The event was full of climaxes, and the actors' superb performances won rounds of applause from the audience. One of the round children, the extraordinarily lively and self-created airplane dance, was awarded the Most Creative Dance Award, the Most Expressive Award, and the highest popularity award under the suggestion of Zhang Salmon, General Manager of Beilong Center Property. Certificates and prizes were awarded by Beilong Center Property provided by management company. Shortly after the competition started, leaders from the city committee and city administration came to give guidance. They had cordial and friendly exchanges with the participating Taiwanese compatriots and decided to jointly promote the progress and development of cultural activities for middle-aged and elderly people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Lu Chang'an left first after Zhou Shuling and Bai Hui led the dance performance. Originally, a team composed of veteran cotters was probably the first place, but Zhu Huntang named her and personally came to cheer for her team, which led to the news that the leaders are also here, and the final result will probably satisfy everyone in the deaf community. The night has grown dark. Many stories will happen at night, shrouded in a layer of blackness. The stories are often associated with elements such as surprise attacks, conspiracies, secrets, etc., and the things that happen between men and women under the night add a lot of erotic flavor. Even the signs for bathing and sauna places are more likely to make people want to move at night, but when they see such places during the day, they often just glance at them and forget to make any association. Of course, this is also related to the fact that these places are closed most of the day. Some people think of home in the dark night, warm meals, and family members waiting for them to come home. Some people thought of the warm pool, the slender white hands, and the smooth skin on his body in the dark night. Some people thought of the story of Zhang Sheng and Kui Yingying in the dark night, of Zhou Banjian hiding under the beds of Zhao Er and Li Shishi, and of the red plum blossoms on the snowy nights of the Four Seasons in Linen's West Lake. Lu Chang'an walked slowly towards the Zhuyuan community. When he left the Heilong Gymnasium, he found that Lu Yuang was hanging out with Zhu Huntang and others, having a lot of fun and meeting up to party all night long. How come Lu Yuang and Zhu Huntang play together? Lu Chang'an is a little confused about this. After all, Lu Yuang is a professor who has done research in her professional field. What can she and Zhu Huntang have in common? What's more, in this case, Zhu Huntang will definitely bring Shang Guandandan, Zhou Dongdong, Zhou Shuling and other people who are ignorant or don't like to learn with them. What can they do? Well, there is another Baifen who seems to find pleasure in how to lick Shang Guandandan well. At this time, Zhongqing should invite Lu Chang'an to have a barbecue, but as a cousin, apart from teasing Lu Chang'an in private, she didn't seem to have the idea of openly asking Lu Chang'an away in front of her cousin. So Lu Chang'an went to find his girlfriend. As long as An Nuan didn't have elective courses or study plans at night, she would work hard to practice football. She originally felt that in a university full of talents, she was limited by her talent and innate conditions and had to give up her favorite sports. However, with the help of Lu Chang'an, she regained hope and opportunities. An Nuan had no reason not to cherish an effort. Even now, on the surface, An Nuan is still not the most talented and well-conditioned in the Hunan University volleyball team, but in terms of hard work, she is at least among the top 3. In fact, An Nuan has vaguely felt that he has great potential that has not been released. As long as he works hard to explore, the future can be expected. She also has some guilt and uneasiness about cheating, because compared to other teammates, her ability seems to be related to her super boyfriend rather than her own quality and hard work. But there's nothing we can do about it. Who wants her boyfriend to be Lu Chang'an, but their boyfriend is not? Maybe she can join the national team in the future, An Nuan thought ambitiously, because she didn't have much confidence in herself at first, but now she has too much confidence in her boyfriend. Lu Chang'an stood at the door of Juyuan community, waiting for An Yuan. From a distance, he saw 2 big white legs like 2 swaying fluorescent sticks under the street lights. She was wearing a coat, with only sports shorts and shoes and socks underneath. Her legs were bare and she was not afraid of the cold. The tall figure of the girl was as beautiful as spring should be, warm and full of vitality, making people feel that spring is so good. She held a volleyball in her hand, tossing it from time to time, or spinning it on her fingertips. Her bulging chest under the coat was restrained by a sports vest, her slender waist was swaying, and her lower abdomen was like a lick of cream. Ice cream melts smoothly and softly. Looking carefully, An Nuan has An Nuan's beauty. She is definitely not the shadow of Professor Lu, or a low-end version. At this time, An Nuan walked to a bench by the wall. A young man sitting on the bench playing with his mobile phone suddenly stood up and stopped An Nuan. Lu Chang'an walked over and saw that An Nuan didn't seem to be afraid. He just turned his heels back in embarrassment and leaned back, maintaining a distant posture. Walking to An Nuan and the young man, Lu Chang'an heard clearly that he was blocking the road to express his love again, so he threw the young man to the other side of the wall, then took the volleyball from An Nuan, held her hand and went to go back. "You are so domineering," An Nuan leaned on Lu Chang'an's shoulder and shook his arm coquettishly. "No, doesn't he want me to throw him over the wall?" Lu Chang'an expressed doubts. An Nuan laughed out loud. Sometimes he really couldn't figure out whether Lu Chang'an was joking or if his brain circuit was really like this. "Your emotional intelligence is too low. You have to learn to put yourself in others' shoes like me," Lu Chang'an explained. "Think about it, since he has confessed to you, he should at least ask for your personal information. Do you have a boyfriend? What kind of person your boyfriend is, etc. Since he has obtained this information and made a move to block the way to express his love, it means that he does not mind being dealt with by me." "That's right. I actually have an impression of that person just now. Recently, he always goes to the gym to watch our volleyball team's games. Every time he comes, he looks at me with a gentle expression on his face, which makes my skin crawl. But, he doesn't take the initiative to contact me, and I have nothing to do. I can't just chase people away, right?" and Nuan was a little helpless. In fact, this kind of experience didn't happen once or twice. These people don't know what they are thinking. Just ask around or look at Nuan's social media and you will know that she is a famous beauty and has a wife. They all think that they are cao and can tong ke chun lok erchiao. It's all my fault. When I was in high school, I often went to watch you play volleyball, so no one except Chen Changxiu harassed you like this. Lu Chang'an quickly reviewed himself. Since you have started to practice in shorts now, then I decide to continue to watch you play often in the future. I think so too. I was going to bite you, but since your self-examination, I'll bite you anyway. And Nuan chuckled, hiding behind shyly, burying her face in his back and hugging him. Walking forward like a conjoined twin, holding his waist. Lu Chang'an sighed with emotion. If you want to talk dirty, it has to be in Nuan. Many girls also like to tell dirty jokes, but generally they are not as flexible as in Nuan. Lu Chang'an handed the volleyball back to her, then held in Nuan's little volleyball with his backhand, and hurriedly walked into the community with in Nuan on his back. By the way, do you know where my mother went today? And Nuan felt that it was definitely not a coincidence that Lu Chang'an took the opportunity to come to see her, but an arrangement he made based on the actual situation. And Nuan saw her mother's post on Moments today, and the location was actually Bailong Center. However, Bailong Center is Junche's new check-in and popular shopping mall, and Nuan knew it well. The places in the photos her mother sent were not at all. Bailong Center is not a place open to ordinary citizens and tourists. Most people go to Bailong Center to take pictures of the cause sculptures, the square on the top of the podium, the interior of the hotel and the high-rise restaurants, but there are no photos of the glass-roofed garden. And Nuan naturally thought of Zhu Huntang, the eldest lady on the top floor of Bailong Center. Only this person could have such a luxurious, fairyland-like private garden in Bailong Center, and it would not be open to the public and could be played by oneself. But why did mother get together with Zhu Huntang? Your mother and Zhu Huntang are together. They seemed to be in agreement unexpectedly and decided to party all night tonight, so I came over to accompany you. Lu Chang'an said. Ah! What happened to them? Ever since Nuan and Hans Hizi met Zhu Huntang holding an alpaca, the relationship between Nuan and Zhu Huntang has developed from looking at each other when they met to nodding and smiling. But after all, Zhu Huntang is considered a general of Bai Xiaolu and Qin Loca's family. After all, he is not the same as Nuan. His mother actually went to hang out with them. The enemy is really within. Nuan, who suffered a loss, used to think that her mother's threats could only be regarded as internal conflicts, but now there are faint signs of internal and external collusion. Your mother and Zhu Huntang actually have some things in common. It's hard to count. They feel too good about themselves and are extremely confident and don't know what to say. Lu Chang'an can understand. Today, when he threw Lu Yuang on the tatami, he actually expected that he was rescued by Zhu Huntang, but he didn't expect that these two people would have the same chemistry. You actually scolded my mother, and Nuan was surprised and happy, but she couldn't say that she scolded her well. Later, she would reward him for sleeping in her bed later, and Nuan would sleep in the study. She knew Lu Chang'an will definitely not go back tonight. It is just a normal thing for a boyfriend to stay at his girlfriend's house. As for Lu Chang'an having to sleep in the study room with Nuan, or forcing Nuan to sleep in her room together, these things are beyond Nuan's control. Her boyfriend is Lu Chang'an, who can resist him? Huizong is the younger brother of Zhezong, so he is also Zhao Er. Because in the previous article, Huizong was called Zhao Er and was educated by book friends, so I will explain it here. Chapter 204 of Volume 3, Climbing the Balcony. It's a new month, please vote.